take the roll call real quick first.
Oh, yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Attorney Miss.
Carlson, Hurtak. Here. Clendenin. Maniscalco. Here. Vieira. Miranda.
Here.
And Henderson.
Present.
We have a physical quorum.
Thank you. So we're picking up where we left off. Director Moody with our, I think we're at item number 4, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, item number 4.
Great.
Yes.
Item number 4 regards the CAC policy update. And we have a presentation prepared for today, as well as we have the managers for Ybor and East Tampa here to present on their changes as well. So my priority is to make sure that when a motion is passed, we fully answer the motion and don't take it in a different direction. So we want to be really specific with responding to your request and making sure that we are passing that motion. A little bit of background and overview about the CAC. The last time that the policy was updated was in 2019, and the last time that the CRA bylaws were updated was in 2008. This topic was revisited at the June 8th CRA board retreat, and we had a great discussion on with board members and really the need for more clarity around CAC roles and responsibilities. And consensus was built around updating the policies and restructuring the CACs to become independent of other organizations, and to also explore a way to expand community representation across the district. So with that, on July 20th, the following motion passed. The CRA staff was requested to draft the following revisions to the CRA's current Community Advisory Committee policy for consideration by the CRA board. To revise the criteria and the selection process for new CAC members for the Ybor City and East Tampa community redevelopment areas to what is currently in place for the other CACs. This is in lieu of the Board of Directors for YCDC and the Ybor CRA and the East Tampa Community Revitalization Partnership for the East Tampa CRA. We're also asked to provide a timeline and a transition process for changing the membership of the Ybor City CAC and the East Tampa CAC as it's currently constituted in the CRA's current policy. And recommend any additional changes or clarifications that might be useful in connection with the current CAC policy, and that these revisions be brought to today, which is August 17th, 2023. So the CRA drafted the following CAC policies and the CRA bylaws with careful consideration and community engagement with their CACs and with the overall community, and the managers have really helped lead the charge and bring this information back. And as I said in this morning, just really handling these changes with sensitivity, care, and concern. So proposed revisions to the CAC policy mostly are around appointments. So all CACs will complete the application process and now be appointed by the CRA board. YCDC and the East Tampa Community Revitalization Partnership will be separate organizations from the CAC, but still serve as ex officios. The East Tampa Community Redevelopment Plan is currently being updated to reflect this. So that is around appointments. Then we have composition, size, and terms. Each CAC will be limited to 15 members max, so a quorum is often reached and meetings can occur. Members will be elected for 2-year terms and can be re-elected to serve for a consecutive 2 years at a 4-year max consecutive term limit. Then someone else will come and provide their services. We've updated the ex officios to reflect even greater community and stakeholder representation. And if ex officio does not refer new representation after an individual's 4-year max term, the seat will change from an ex officio to an at-large for 2 years until a new representative is designated, and then the ex officio will resume the reserve seat. The chair term and duties, we have chairs and co-chairs, and they will be elected to serve a full 2-year terms. And this is updated terminology just to allow for them to get settled in and to continue for another year. We also added a travel and training policy, and this permits the chair to attend the annual FRA conference, the Florida Redevelopment Association conference, and if they cannot, then they can designate a member on their behalf, whether it's the chair or another representative that's interested in attending. A little bit more before we move on, just wanted to state the purpose of the policy. The purpose of the CAC policy is to provide guidelines that each community redevelopment agency shall follow. The purpose of a CAC is to promote the interest of individuals who live, work, operate, or own property in the redevelopment areas. We talked about appointments, size composition, terms of service, chair terms, and travel policy. These are all of our current CACs for each district. You'll see some have 9, some have all the way up to 15. And any item highlighted in yellow is a change that was made. So we have, in downtown, we added the Tampa General Hospital. They're a major stakeholder in that area. For Ybor City, we have ex officios, but the yellow are added ex officios to the structure. We have the Gabor District Coalition, the Ybor Historic Social Club, Ybor Merchant Association, and the YCDC, the Ybor City Development Corporation. And they're maxed at 15 members. Then we move into the Channel District that has 9 members. They'll have 3 ex officios, all remaining the same, and they will also have 6 at-large members. Drew Park also has 9 total, 3 ex officios that are all of the same, and 6 at-large members as well. Then we move on to East Tampa. We have 13 ex officios, 11 are active neighborhood associations, and 2 seats will be reserved for the East Tampa Community Revitalization Partnership, and we'll have 2 at-large seats. So we thought it was important that the partnership stays heavily involved, and we connected with them, so they will have those 2 seats. And Mr. McCray will talk about this a little bit more, but we'll make sure that it's active neighborhood associations within East Tampa. So when an appointment comes up, we will look at the active neighborhood association list, and then we'll do a random selection, and they will be offered that opportunity. They're also maxed out at 15 members max. Then we move on to Tampa Heights. We have 4 ex officios that are represented there, as well as 5 at-large members. No changes happened there. Central Park will also have 9, 2 ex officios, and 1 being added as the Tampa Housing Authority, and they will have 6 at-large members. That the Housing Authority was important given all of their development. Same thing with West Tampa. We are also asking the Tampa Housing Authority to join our efforts in West Tampa with all of their development. There'll be 10 ex officios total, 2 at-large members. So we're going to start getting into the details of them, but I'll pause there for questions before I pass it on.
Board Member Hurtak.
Thank you. I just had a clarification question. So ex officio would not be at large. They would not have to apply to come to us. They would be simply nominated by the group. So if we're looking at downtown, the downtown partnership would choose someone to represent them, and they would be on the board.
They come before you
For approval.
Oh, well, we
For
would,
approval.
okay,
You
we
still
would
have-
still have to approve,
Yes.
but either way, the downtown partnership would say, I want, John Smith. And then we would just approve, so there wouldn't be John Smith and Sally Jones.
There could be.
Oh, but both of those would have to be nominated by the downtown partnership.
Yes, they can give us options, and those options will
Okay,
be
okay.
presented, and then you can select the
So,
appointee.
but it would be the downtown partnership. So I just wanted to clarify because we got some public comment today from the East Tampa. And so what it sounds like is that College Hill Belmont Heights Neighborhood Association and Crime Watch would be able to nominate someone for us to choose.
Yes.
So it would still be nominated from that community.
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Yeah, I just, any other comments from the board? Yeah, very collaborative effort. I like that. Even the fact that, in developing this plan, there was clear communication, with all the stakeholders to get to this point. So I appreciate your work on that. So ready for
Absolutely.
the details from your managers.
Thank you so much. Yes, it was very time consuming because it became this very complex thing to address, but we
Yeah.
wanted to simplify it to make it easy to understand and to communicate to others. One more thing that I'll say before I pass it on is that we also just wanted to clarify that unexcused absences are tracked by our staff. So after 3 unexcused absences, they'll have a conversation of a replacement then. So that's not the responsibility of the chair or co-chair, but is the responsibility of CRA staff, just to keep that objective for the CAC.
Board Member Carlson.
I don't know exactly where you're going next, but should I talk about the Ybor issue now or later?
We're gonna get into it next.
Okay, then.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so
One
with
of
that,
the
we're
things I
gonna-
wanted to ask you about on another slide was will you go back to it so I can get the visual? The last one, the travel policy, should we, make the motion to accept your report Would that FRA conference be the one that's coming up?
The one that's coming up in any
Would they be able to
future.
participate in the one coming up?
Yes, the chair.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Board Member Clendenin.
So, back to the other slide with the breakdown of all the committees. So, when you made a determination of the total size of these committees, was there, did I miss, like, what was the rhyme or reason for having such a disparity amongst the sizes?
No, that's a great question. We have some that were up to 25. We have some that remain at 9. This is what the CAC has appointed as their size, desired size, with 15 being the max, just so it can reach a quorum. We have had some issues reaching quorum just when
Right.
there's so many members.
We've had a greater disparity now. We have a much
Oh,
greater-
I understand that, but I was still recreating it. I was just curious, because obviously, especially when you're talking about the size and the numbers of, and the dollar figures, sometimes it seems kind of like crazy that we're looking at some that are so big and some that are relatively more manageable on the sizes. I'll commend you, because I know it was a really big lift to want to tackle this, and it wasn't easy. So I think y'all did a really good job of really trying to put some common sense and rhyme and reason into this, and some structure that was needed. So thank you.
Thank
Board
you.
Member Carlson.
Yeah, just in like 30 seconds, I'll say what I was going to say a minute ago. You know, there are two special cases here, which are Ybor and East Tampa. We heard a comment about East Tampa this morning. We know in both cases there are some ruffled feathers. I have not researched East Tampa at all. I've not talked to anybody, so I'm not at all an expert on that. And I'm not comparing Ybor to any of the others, but I've had a lot of conversations around Ybor. And Erica knows this because she and Elise have been talking to folks too, including the chair. They right now have 25, and they feel like they're giving up a lot by giving up the current structure. And as they're looking at all the things they can do now and the limitations that this new structure is going to put on them, they're very hesitant to do all this. But what they especially don't like the number 15, and instead of that, they would like 10 at large, 10 ex officio, which would be representatives of different industry groups in Ybor, and then Joe Capitano and Fran Constantina, right? Yeah, my brain's not working. Are both were both promised lifetime emeritus seats, and just to honor the commitment they made, they're okay not going all the way back to 25, but if we did 10 ex officio, 10 at large, and then did the 2 emeritus ones, but said that it's only to grandfather that in and not to have any emeritus positions again, it would allow the chair and others to go back and say, look, we got some of what we want, even though we got all these other things taken away. And so either now or later, I'll make a motion, depending on what you all say, to do that. Just what we gain is that they're giving up the YCDC structure and they're joining our structure. We're just making a small accommodation to help them fit one structure into the other.
Any other comments? Okay. Board Member Hurtak.
Thank you, and I want to thank you, Chair Henderson, for bringing up the part about the FRA conference, because I do remember at last year's FRA conference, there were a lot of CAC members in attendance. So you're basically saying that only one person could go per year from each CAC?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Clendenin.
I don't know if this, I know, Mr. Carlson, we're going to talk about that a little bit later, what you just described, otherwise let's get into the points, because I might as well jump in. I think that staff did a great job in tackling a really difficult issue here. And they've created a process which, while not perfect, is I look at across the spread of these numbers, and I know they've had issues with quorums in the past, and we all know working in different bodies, sometimes as they get so large, they become less effective and overly bureaucratic and burdensome. And I understand where Ybor is coming from, but it would almost, okay, if you did it for Ybor, why wouldn't you do it for everybody? And I understand that also, do they have the authority to create ex officio? that seems kind of weird. I understand, and I like both Fran and Joe. and so it's nothing personal, but we're creating a whole, we're trying to create some order out of what and prior to, this council was disorder, and you got to start somewhere. And I hate to do a death by 1,000 cuts. I think we should go with what the staff has created, and if over a period of time we feel like, this isn't working, we can change it or add something to it or go back and revisit those issues. But I think for now, taking this pill, the medicine, might be a difficult pill to swallow right at first, but let's see if it cures the disease, and then we can come back and revisit it at another time to add on to things and make these amendments. But I don't want to diminish this heavy lift that staff has just gone through to create this document and create this procedure.
Board Member Miranda.
Thank you much. So they were at 25, and what are they going to be at now, 20?
15.
We're
16?
proposing 15.
15.
Let me ask you this, can you tell us, in those 25, what was the attendance record of all of them?
I'm sure Manager Orr, who's coming up next, definitely has
That way I
that.
can find out if they all showed up or not, and what the value is, 25 the value or 16 is the value?
Yeah.
Because if you had 25 and only 16 showed up, we shouldn't have any more. That's just
Yeah.
looking at it realistic.
Yeah. So now we're getting ready to get into the data.
We're gonna get into the details
Okay.
now, yep. And then just to respond, the max is 15, so if a CAC wanted to increase their number to 15, we would entertain that for sure.
Thank you.
And then now we get into the transition planning and what the details look like. We wanted to make sure that there was a smooth transition, so it'll happen over time and gradually. So with that, I'll be on the side for questions, but we do have EBOR CRA Manager, Courtney Orr, ready to come up.
Thank you.
All right. Plot twist, we are going to move to East Tampa first. Going to have Manager Cedric McCray come up and speak on East Tampa specifically. I apologize for that.
I love a plot twist. Who doesn't love a good plot twist?
Good afternoon, East Tampa CRA Manager
Good
Cedric
afternoon.
McCray. Okay, so in its current form, we have a total of 13 slots or East Tampa CAC spaces for the East Tampa CAC. What's being proposed, as Director Moody said, would be 15, and then we'd have 2 ex officio seats, and that would be comprised of individuals from the East Tampa Partnership. To assist with that transition, and I know that I mentioned during the workshop on June 8th at the River Center, we are actually in the election cycle currently. Our election is scheduled for September 12th. And had a meeting with our East Tampa Partnership last Tuesday, and this information was shared with them as it relates to how we would transition. We have some 6 seats that are currently not set to expire until 2024, and we have 7 seats that are currently set to expire September 30th of 2023. Those individuals that are going to be going through the elections process will be elected to the East Tampa Community Revitalization Partnership and not for the CAC. We would actively recruit and work with the Neighborhoods Department and Janelle McGregor and our staff to recruit residents from East Tampa. We have a total of 16 neighborhoods. I believe 11 or 12 of them are currently listed as active or in process of being created. So we would have conversations and engage those neighborhoods to recruit individuals to apply. And once those applications are submitted, they would, instead of coming to us as a staff, they would go through the clerk's office and they would be moved forward, just similar to any of the processes for you all's boards and commissions for the city council or the city of Tampa, period. And so you're able to see the slots that will be expiring that are highlighted. And we have had discussions with members of the CAC and the East Tampa Partnership as recently as last Tuesday. In receiving information from our neighborhoods office and the active associations, we went through at USoftware to randomly select neighborhoods that could be used to fill those positions in 2025, and they are listed in the green: the Legacy of Fair Oaks Community Association, Jackson Heights Neighborhood Association and Crime Watch, Southeast Seminole Heights Civic Association, Live Oak Square Neighborhood Association, VME-BOR, as well as Rainbow Heights and Seminole Heights East Neighborhood Associations. So that's what is being proposed, that those neighborhood associations would have representation when we have the formal elections process, or, I'm sorry, have it, not elections, appointment process that we will be moving forward with and then proposing today. And so we will have the 6 remaining seats. You will have 7 new neighborhood associations, or seats were designated for those 7 seats. Through the neighborhood associations, you will have 2 at-large seats to pass through the application process. And as it relates to the new member structure, those are the neighborhood associations that and how that would flow moving forward, going from 2025 to 2026.
Questions? Board Member Carlson.
Unless you want to go first.
Well, mine is more so of an administrative question, and I like the fact that you said it would go through the clerk's office, the applications. That takes it away out of the manager's hands. Have you all had some conversation among yourselves about people coming to you with their application and how you're going to handle that? Everyone should have the same language is what I would be recommending, so that you can be neutral, because you're not going to make that decision. The board is making that decision. The onus isn't on you all. So I'm just curious if you all have had that discussion. I like that it's going through the clerk's office.
Yes, yes, and it will take some education moving forward, because I know that, you know, folks are creatures of habit,
Right.
and we would have to definitely inform. And as we're campaigning and sharing this information with the neighborhood associations, we will have to make sure that they are aware that, you know, anything that's submitted, you know, doesn't come to the East Tampa CRA office or staff. It will go to the city clerk's office.
Yeah, and one just last comment. Very first community members that I met with when I was councilwoman-elect was from members not currently represented that are listed on this screen right now, that feel like they have been kept out of the loop because of the election process that currently existed. So I'm glad to see a pathway where it provides every community an opportunity to be represented. Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, I want to thank Chair Henderson for bringing this issue forward. We've been talking about EBOR in East Tampa for 4 years that I've been on, and I don't think any of us made the motion. There was a lot of politics all around as you were in the middle of it. You know, the person this morning talked about the election, but the election was really political and controversial because there were questions about who qualified to vote and how you count the votes and all these problems, and different factions were doing things, and it was too politicized for what it was. But most importantly, the city, it appeared, I'll put qualifiers, it appeared that the city might potentially become liable for how it was put together, and that was my main concern. And so I'm glad, well, if you, besides all the other consistency things, the real big things we're getting here, the huge things we're getting, which was her motion, is that we're separating from these 2 other nonprofits. We're making it clear that it is a CAC, not that entity. So I want to thank and congratulate her from that. Second, unless the board of the East Tampa Revitalization Partnership votes to dissolve it, it continues, but we have to separate from it. So what communication are we making to the board and the public about what happens to the East Tampa Revitalization Partnership now, so that we make sure that the public knows we're no longer associated with it? They can continue if they want, or they can shut it down. They can do whatever they want with it. It just happened that when it was formed, that entity helped advocate for it, and so they became the CAC. Now we're separating it, but we want to get rid of the liability, I think, all connected to it, right?
Yeah, and as you heard during some of the comments, there was some heartburn with some of the folks assembled at the meeting last Tuesday as it relates to what it's going to look like, and as it relates to the East Tampa Partnership and standing on its own as it relates to, because right now, a lot of those meetings and, between T&I and, our staff, to help facilitate and host those meetings. So there were some questions about that, and I assured the folks that we will, continue to have conversations about what their course of action could be moving forward. But we were responding to what was asked of us as a staff by the CRA board.
Are we sending, maybe Morris could help answer this, are we sending like official letters to notify the board of the East Tampa Partnership that the city is no longer affiliated and that they're an independent organization or something?
I just clarify, I think the city's position is that the partnership has always been an independent organization. In fact, since I've been here, we basically have said, your election is your election. You hold it per your bylaws. We're not going to tell you how to hold your elections. Whoever you vote in as the board is the CAC. So that's been our position all along. Now, we can clarify that communication to make it clear, abundantly clear, that there's no official linkage between the partnership and the city. But in my opinion, there never really has been.
Yeah, except we got more involved than maybe we should have. But if I think we ought to make it very clear, and not in a demeaning way. They can go off and do whatever they want with a partnership, but just make it very clear legally that the CAC is separate, and even though some of the people are the same, that it's a separate entity, and you can put in there that it was always separate. We will not be involved in the elections or anything going forward. And then I would also suggest sending it to the media, in particular the Sentinel Bulletin, just so folks know. It'll be two parallel organizations now, not the same.
Board Member Hurtak.
Thank you. There are a lot of neighborhoods in East Tampa, and I think it's important that we make sure everybody feels heard. But what I do not see in this list, and because our mission as a CRA is we are focusing not just on residents, but the economy, I don't see any businesses on this list. I don't see any type of business organization, and that just concerns me. Not because I don't think the neighborhoods need to have a say, because I do believe they do, but we don't even have a spot here for even one business owner. And so I am concerned about that. I know we've got two at-large that since it's up to us, we could focus on that. And I don't know what would be equitable if instead we could trade off neighborhood, because I know there'll be more neighborhood associations created as the neighborhood relations keeps building. In fact, I know there's a new one coming online that's not even on here. So my question is, going forward, how do we balance that? And as we develop the businesses of East Tampa, which East Tampa is strongly asking for, how do we create space for them?
Director Moody.
Thank you so much for pointing that out. We do see the partnership as a business organization, so they have two seats as well, and just want to reiterate that we will continue to stay close with them as well, and them have a say in what's happening. And I've met with the chair, and we want their success. So by no way does this mean that we want them to dissolve. We actually want them to strengthen and be self-sufficient long term, even after the CAC sunset. The at-large positions, they are live, work, own, or operate. So we do want to encourage businesses to fulfill those at-large seats, as well as I know some residents are excited about it too. But I do appreciate your comments and you pointing that out, because we are focusing on building the commercial corridors within East Tampa. Yeah. So it's very relevant.
Thank you. And that's just, when we were looking at that list initially of the different groups, it seems that this is the only one that does not have dedicated business owners or business entities. So I would certainly, I feel like, we have a great idea going forward, and I will certainly look for those at-large members. Me personally will look for business people when I vote, but maybe as time goes on and more neighborhood associations come online, we may have to revisit the structure somewhat, to not go over 15, but see how we can have some equity, but also as the business community grows in East Tampa, we will need to make sure we have some seats for that. So just looking at that in the future.
Yep.
Board Member Miranda.
Thank you, Chairman. Madam Chair, I was just looking at that. You have 13 that are already on. When I saw the two at large, I was saying, well, possibly the two at large are the ones that are going to be from the business community in some
Yes,
sort of way. So I appreciate that, and I wanted to say thank you to Chairman Henderson for bringing us to this point. And I think these things that Councilmember Carlson talked about are very good, and going forward, I think we're going to have a much tighter organization.
The neophytes. Yeah. Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, I just want to say I agree with Board Member Hurtak also on the business thing. And I don't want to complicate it, but if we have 20 neighborhoods, and I'm just making this up, but if we have 20 neighborhoods and 8 seats, maybe we should rotate them somehow or something, so that it's fair to everybody. But we definitely need business representation. And I would, you said, sorry, I'm going to keep harping on words, but you said we're going to be looking at building the commercial corridors, and I would rather, the word building and corridors implies big buildings. And what I've said to all the builders, I met with the Builders Association last week, and I said, we need to focus on people and companies and private businesses, entrepreneurship, not buildings, and not subsidized building. And everybody agrees with that. And so if we're building up the business community, and I know Morris won't let us do that directly, but if we can build up the business community in East Tampa and help people become entrepreneurs, then the private sector will come in and build office places for them. And we can help them, but my point is, let's not think about it visually like buildings in a corridor. Let's think about it as people starting businesses, and there's a thriving business community going on.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. We have one more manager, right, to present?
We do. Are there any
Okay.
other questions on East Tampa?
No.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. And I have to say it, but as we were speaking about affordable housing, and, it's like we need to build up the business in more of these residential areas and more of the residential in these higher business areas. So it's really that balance, and it comes throughout the discussion. Also, before I pass it off, I do want to just make a point that these are public meetings, and we encourage everyone to participate. People interested in the agenda items, people who just want to share their voice on the community. So just want to open up the invitation for anyone to join us in these community advisory committee meetings. Yes, there's a committee, but there's public comment involved. There's relevant items if you want to stay in touch with what's going on in your neighborhood. So just wanted to open up the invitation to anyone watching, or if anyone from the board would like to attend. We are going to move into Ybor, a little bit different. We have the YCDC, the Ybor Community Development Corporation. As you know, they are pursuing a special service district, so we are cheering them on and supporting them, and also want to stay connected to all of the amazing things coming online for them as well. So we have our manager, Miss Courtney Orr. She is very connected to the CAC, the community, and she's going to be the best representation of this information today. So, Miss Orr. Yeah.
So on this slide, you'll see the current structure of the Ybor City CAC. We have 25 members plus the 2 additional emeritus members who are non-voting members. And the column there with the 15 members speaks to the industry seats that currently are represented, and then the ex officio off to the right-hand side. What we're proposing is that we have what we've already spoken about, the 15 members, not to go above 15 members, with 5 at large, and then 10 ex officio. So we did maintain the ex officio representatives, which was great, and that's what the CAC wanted. They were worried about losing that representation because it compels the organizations to send a representative to the table. So the only thing is different is the at-large. We don't really have named industry seats, but it could actually provide an opportunity for those who were in that particular industry. Now they could be considered. So here are our 25 members currently serving, with the 2 emeritus there at the bottom. And we're getting ready to shift into the second term. We have 2 two-year terms currently, And we're getting ready October 1st to shift into the second of their total 4-year term. So this is going to be their round 2. And then we'd like to honor having them serve out that final 2-year term to take them to 2025. Some were already coming off of the board that are marked 2023. So that actually just through attrition already is getting us closer to that requested 15 max number. And then so with not filling those 2023 seats, you'll see that we're getting to that 15. And there we have the proposed ex officio members. And instead of having them expire in 2025, like the previous slide, we'll stagger them to 2026 so that we don't have a mass exodus of knowledge all in 2025. We'll have some people that will stay on. Half of the board will stay on through 2026, and then we'll have the replacements there listed as 2025. And then, so this slide is, just represents the final results with Ybor City Development Corporation separating from the city. They would then have a seat on this particular CAC diagram here. So we would have the 5 at large and then the 10 ex officio named organizations. And that concludes my information.
Thank you. Board Member Hurtak.
Thank you for this, and I think this shows a really clear definition of what I was talking about, because here you have a nice combination of civic and business, and even, I mean, there's a section here for the social clubs. I mean, what in East Tampa could we put in there? I mean, I think that in the future, we really have to look at, I mean, I would say majority of this is business, and I know right now, majority of East Tampa is residential. But as we transition, we should always be looking at this. So I don't know if this is something that should come to us every few years to just kind of update. I would love an update in 2 years, perhaps. So I'll make the motion that, well, let's see if it passes first, and then I can make a motion after that to have this come forward every 2 years for us to really look at the categories and make sure it sticks, because that's, I think, part of the problem of what happened overall was everybody just got familiar with the spaces. So I want to thank you, Ms. Orr, about really thinking about how to capture each group in the way that you did. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Board Member Clendenin.
Once again, I want to applaud staff and everyone, the community leaders as well, that participated in this overhaul. Change is difficult, and it's very it's tough to to really come in and do something like this. So I think you guys did a very effective job in such a short period of time. So I'd like to make a motion that the CRA board approve the amended Community Advisory Committee policy as presented by staff effective immediately.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Board Member Clendenin, second by Board Member Miranda. Is there any discussion? Okay, okay, go ahead.
Yeah,
We'll
I'm
take
gonna-
a roll call vote, but
I'm gonna make
Board
a-
Member Carlson.
I'm going to make a motion just after this regarding the Ybor City characterization, because I promised them I would, so we'll see how that goes too. Thank you.
Roll call vote, please.
Vieira,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Hurtak,
Yes.
Clendenin,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
and Henderson.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Okay,
Madam
so
Chair.
we're going to pick up
Can I
with
make
more
that-
discussion. Yes, I thought you had one too, but go ahead. Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I just would again, in the case of Ybor and East Tampa, what we're gaining is that we're not associated with separate nonprofits anymore. So that's a huge gain for us, just not being affiliated with those other organizations, because it simplifies it legally in all kinds of ways. So the thing that the Ybor folks have asked me for, and I've talked to staff about it, is since they're giving up so much, they would like it as a minimum to have this structure. So I'd like to make a motion for the Ybor CAC to have 10 at-large members, 10 ex officio, and then grandfather in the two emeritus positions to be sunset when they're no longer active.
Okay, so we have a motion from Board Member Carlson regarding Ybor City, second by Board Member Maniscalco. Any discussion?
Just to clarify that motion, that would mean
Yes.
that the policy that you just approved would have to be amended.
Amended, right.
So just, anyway.
Any discussion?
Yes.
Okay, Board Member Clendenin.
So I know, I believe Councilman Miranda asked for, like, do we have data on attendance, on what these meetings actually looked like, how many people attended, how difficult was it to reach quorums, and what the unintended consequences of doing this is. And then I would probably say, you know, I think, as I said earlier in my conversation, my gut tells me change is difficult. It's hard to go through this process. It looks like staff really did its due diligence, worked with the community. And I understand that there's some, you know, folks that are, but we had the same issue in East Tampa, but there seemed to be, you know, going along with this. And I think probably the impact on East Tampa is more dramatic than even Ybor City. So if we start whittling it away, it's death by 1,000 cuts. I think we should keep going the way we're going with what we're at, not change it. Maybe we could visit another time, and do we have that information?
Board Member, did you want to speak? No. Okay, Board Member Vieira.
Thank you. Just really quick on this, I mean, I'd like to speak to some of the folks in Ybor City myself on this proposal. I have no presumptive opposition to it, but maybe could we have it come back next month for consideration, Board Member Carlson, or? I mean, in other words, is time of the essence?
Okay,
I'm not opposed to it.
could I withdraw my motion, make a new motion?
I would still like to hear from Ms. Orr with Board Member Clendenin's question. Like,
Can I just say the chair has been the intermediary to talk to his constituents, and he's talked to staff, and they weren't happy with the 15, which is why they came to me and asked me about it. And so even though there's not 100 people here protesting, they would like it was the chair representing their interest, that they really feel like they don't have to go all the way up to 25, but they would like to, at a minimum, just have this.
Yeah, so in reference to the attendance question, we always, in my 8 years, we've never missed quorum. We've had 13 members at least show up. That's what we need for our 51% of the 25 members. So we've always had quorum. It can range, I just briefly glanced through all the minutes on my computer, and it can range from 15 to 20 participants, but we never capture the entire 25. So like I mentioned earlier, the only concern that the group had was well, when we spoke to as publicly as a group, was that the ex officio representatives were maintained.
I'm not opposed to the ex officio members maintaining. I don't think we'll need 22.
Board Member Hurtak.
thank you. I was actually just gonna say the exact same thing that Board Member Miranda said. I have no problem if we want to add those 2 ex officio members. I think that when you promise someone something,
You mean emeritus?
I'm sorry, emeritus, yes,
Well,
to get to 17. But beyond that, I feel like you've done a lot of work, and your staff has done a lot of work to prepare. And I think 17 is a reasonable goal, but I would not support anything past that at this point.
Just to clarify, I
Yeah.
believe that under the current policy, the 2 emeritus are non-voting.
That's correct.
Yeah,
And
so
just-
that would be fine.
Yeah.
And just to add some more information to that, I did
okay.
reach out to Fran Costantino and asked if she would serve as in an at-large seat, and she accepted that and filled out an application for an at-large seat. And then Joe Senior isn't, due to health, he just really doesn't participate at all anymore.
The emeritus positions that you're talking
The
about.
2 emeritus positions.
Emeritus,
So
yes.
Fran, we've already taken care of by filling an at-large position, and Joe just isn't able to participate.
But the
Okay,
problem with,
excuse me. Board Member Carlson, and then Hurtak.
Yeah, the thing
in
is,
terms of who goes first.
if the 2 emeritus positions take at-large, but this is the position that the chair is telling me, if the 2 emeritus positions take the two at-large positions, it takes away the ability to get representation. The meetings I've been in Ybor are packed full of people where there's no seats. And so I don't know how many of them are board members or not, but It's a very active group. What I would propose is that we go forward with the motion. If that motion fails, I'll make the motion that Board Member Miranda suggested and see what happens with that one.
Board Member Hurtak.
And that's what I was going to say as well. I mean, if, I mean, these emeritus positions, or, yes, emeritus positions, if they don't have voting roles anyway,
Yeah.
I don't see a reason why we can't just keep Ms. Constantino, and then if the other person doesn't participate as it is due to health reasons anyway, then they're welcome to if they feel up to it, but they don't have to. And then, you know, as those folks don't participate anymore, then we're back to the 15. I think that's
Yeah.
reasonable.
And as an emeritus member, they are non-voting, and Fran would reference that often. Oh, I can't vote. Oh, I can't vote. So she may appreciate the fact that she can now be a voting member, and we could always reference her as former emeritus.
Yeah. I just want to say that I appreciate all the work that you all have done to come to this point. And there's a book out there called Who Moved My Cheese? Change is difficult. Change is difficult. But what you've presented with the 15 across the board for me is what works for me. We actually voted on it unanimously. And I think that we should give Ybor City an opportunity to receive what we've just voted on just now. The beautiful part about being a board is that if we have to circle back because this isn't working, we can make that change as necessary for any of the communities that we're serving as a board. But I like the consistency of what we just voted on, and I would leave it as is. Any further discussion for this? Yes, Board Member Vieira.
Yes, Madam. So, you know, if Councilman Carlson discussed this with the chairman of the board, Mr. Barbas, right, and he's supportive of it, I give that deference. You know, one way or another, moving ahead on it, I'm fine with that. I give the chairman of the board there, CAC board, a reasonable level of deference. But you know, one way or another, you know, moving it forward. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to close the vote and vote. Ready? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor by Board Member Carlson, second by Board Member Maniscalco.
This is to make it 20.
Yes, for the change for e-board. You want to?
10 at large, 10 ex officio, and 2 grandfathered emeritus that would expire when they're no longer active.
Thank you for that clarity. We'll have a roll call vote on this. It was second by Board Member Maniscalco.
Miranda? Yes. Carlson?
Yes.
Hurtak?
No.
Clendenin?
No.
Maniscalco?
Yes.
Vieira?
Yes.
And Henderson.
No.
Motion carried with Hurtak, Clendenin, and Henderson voting no.
Okay.
Thank you all.
So just to clarify, that means, and we can bring this back to get confirmed at the next meeting, but the CAC committee policy is proposed, the Exhibit A will have to be changed, and so there's some language about the maximum 15 members that will have to be changed in that policy, which we'll bring forward. So,
Additionally, and so now we're gonna have East Tampa coming next to do this. So additionally, those 5, I want the staff to come to us and tell us what groups need to be there. That is not something that I mean, we did this fairly. If they're gonna add 5 more members, then it also needs to be done fairly.
Morris, do we need to make a motion to bring back amendment language?
if you'd like, we certainly could do that. I think.
I'd just like to
that
make a
might
motion
clearer.
to bring back to the next meeting, amending language, to allow this one grandfathered situation.
Okay, there's a motion and by Board Member Carlson, second by Board Member Vieira. Discussion, Board Member Hurtak.
Yes, a friendly amendment would be that staff needs to come back with what those five groups are going to be, those 5 positions are gonna focus on.
I think the 5 new ones are all at
At
large,
large.
so there would be the 10 existing ex officio, and then they're adding 5 additional, if I understand the motion. So there would be 10 at-large seats, not 5.
Yeah.
And then 2 emeritus is what's
Yeah,
being
I
proposed.
really don't agree with that, so, oh well. I lost.
But what?
can I say?
Board Member Carlson.
What I suggest, anybody, especially with two colleagues to my left, any questions you have about it, please call the chair. He and his people can't carry messages back and forth with us, but you all can contact them directly. You can go to the meetings and listen to them and talk to them. And there's a lot of bad feelings through some of the changes we've imposed on them in the last year or two, and they feel like they're very active and have been collegial. They were just asking for this as a minimum. Appreciate us moving forward. If we could just make that one tweak, that would be good. And understanding that there are only 2 cases of this because the others were all CSEs anyway. And all we're trying to do is to bring it in so we can separate ourselves from the separate nonprofits, which we've done.
Okay, so there's no more discussion. It passed, so we're good.
Do we vote?
No, now we're getting ready to vote for the most recent motion
To bring it back.
to bring it back.
September.
Yes. And it was seconded by Board Member Vieira. All those in favor? Opposed? Nay. By Hurtak and Henderson. Motion carries. Okay, it is raining. Thank you all so much, CRA managers. We really appreciate everything that you've done on behalf of getting to this point in this process. I see a great future for the CRA board in working with the community. So, and also the opportunity for us as we continue to say everything here on the dais where the community can hear exactly, where we're coming from. So that's it. Let's move forward. We have item number 6 and 7 together.
Yes.
Okay.
Both of these are concerning the downtown. I'll read both of the motions and invite the Urban Core Manager, Jeffrey Burton, to come up. So we have item 6, which is the CRA staff to report on the amount of money that has been committed to downtown, when the CRA voted for various things within the district for enhancements to downtown area and for future advancements. Item number 7 is for CRA staff to analyze the possibility of creating an option to reduce the downtown CRA money, and further that this analysis be brought back for discussion, and if approved, that option would be added to the downtown redevelopment plan process to get public input on it so that a response can be provided by the public by 2024. Now I'll pull up the presentation. And Mr. Burton, if you'd like to come up.
So you asked for an analysis of the downtown related to your current commitments. And this is what you asked for. Just to give you a little background, this CRA is to sunset in 2043. Per a 2014 county interlocal agreement, the city contributes the total amount, which means the county puts in nothing. Though, with the Water Street project, they have committed to $50 million to match our $50 million. So they are investing in the downtown, just not through the CRA. The outlook includes projects to be considered within the 1983/88 redevelopment plan, but does not account for potential changes given its current rewrite. So the new plan is supposed to be out in early spring. And with that, a more relevant and probably more robust plan can be put together. The projection, they estimate an 11% increment starting next year. For this year, we have the full amount that we are aware of, but for every year after that, it's 11%.
Excuse me, before you go on, Board Member Carlson has a question.
Sure.
Thank you. And maybe this is a question for Morris. The numbers we're gonna, can you go back one slide, whoever's running that, please? The top line there says it sunsets in 2043, and I think all the numbers are based on that 2043. But what was it, 3 years ago, the state law was changed to potentially force the sunset of CRAs. And so the city attorney at the time came to us and asked us to arbitrarily put it all the way out to 2043 with the idea that we could shrink it less at some point, but I don't remember what year did it go to before then?
I'd have to go back and look at that, but yeah, there was a motion and there is a resolution where the downtown CRA was extended, and that was pursuant to the 2019 legislation.
But at the time, and maybe my colleagues remember, but at the time, I was worried about extending it out that far, but the argument was made that this gives us flexibility. If we don't do this, the state might shut it down earlier because they could come in and say that no CRAs could be extended at that point. So we extended it out, not thinking that we intentionally wanted it to go to 2043, but that we needed to for legal reasons for the state, right? Am I?
That's essentially correct. I'd have to go back. I apologize. I don't remember when it would have terminated prior to that date, so.
2039.
2039? Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you, Jeff. So it was a 5-year, 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
So these are the commitments that you currently have. Strategic Partners, that's the $50 million agreement that you had with them. There's a match from the county for the same amount. Tampa Convention Center, this number will go all the way to 2029. Straz Performing Arts, it's 25 million, and there are some negotiations being done that we won't go into today, but that number is also out there, and we have put money aside for that already. Tampa Museum of Art, there is not an agreement that has come before the board yet, but you did agree upon a payment plan.
We do have an agreement. We do have an agreement.
Not yet. Relative to Tampa Museum of Art, they've been negotiating the amendment to the lease agreement with the city of Tampa to expand the facility. So that's really and that will be coming to you all, city council, relatively soon.
But we've already committed the dollars.
We've already, I think, allocated money in our budget, but we've not entered into a grant funding agreement, which was what we have to do in order to really finalize the grant, per se.
But I just want to make sure everybody knows we've committed the dollars. We approved that several months ago. It's not a proposed project, it's an approved project.
And finally, the Tampa Theater, which is $14 million, a total of $116.6 million. What you're looking at in the graph is the increment revenue over the next 10 years, and then you're also seeing the
I have to
payments.
apologize. I thought we were talking about Tampa Theater just now. I mixed those two up. Sorry about that.
And what you're looking at between 2024 and 2029, that's pretty much that payment period that you're looking at. Prior to additional growth that was unexpected in this year's tax base, at one point the green graph was below the red graph, so we were actually not bringing in enough money, but luckily for us the economy's good, and that's what we're looking at. So without adding anything else, just what you've committed to, these are some of the items that are left on the table for you to discuss if you wish. Things like affordable housing, Marion Street redevelopment, land acquisition, purchasing more land for housing and other items, Franklin Street to redevelop that, the urban transit circulator, Kylie Gardens redevelopment, Cass Riverwalk intersection. That's something that the Friends of the Riverwalk have been working on. McDill stormwater pretreatment. That is a project to pretreat stormwater that's going through the downtown before it goes into the Hillsborough River, just south of the Sheraton. Redevelopment grants, community policing, which you've already talked about once today. The beneficial Riverwalk intersection, this is the downtown portion of that, to go over, under, or around. Likes Park to redevelop Park, Harbor Island, public art projects, historic streetcar, Poe Garage, and Main Street programs. So these are items that have never been approved by this board, but in listening to the CAC and the downtown partnership and other folks, these are items that we have had in our 10-year budget and we're talking about as we were writing the plan, and which is currently being done now. So these are the items, this is the opportunity cost of if we were just to take take the CRA offline except for paying off what you've already committed to. But The opposite of that, the benefit of that is about $330 million over 10 years. So did not carry it all the way up to 2043, but you can imagine what that would look like, because this carries it out to 2033.
Board Member Clendenin, Board Member Carlson, and then Board Member Maniscalco.
Can you go back to the previous slide?
Oh, sure.
So right now, with what we've currently obligated, if I'm looking at that correct, including the obligations we have above. Now, Councilman Carlson, the discussions that were made and the obligations that were made at Tampa Museum of Art, was it just 15 million?
I don't know that,
Yeah, it's
sorry, I was
definitely-
mistaken, I was talking about Tampa Theater, not Tampa
That
Museum.
ask has not been made. We do know that they are going to request some CRA funding, and so that's.
So Museum of Art hasn't come to us for
No,
the
they've
ask for the
not come to
expansion?
us yet, so that's not been
Okay.
formalized.
So what is
yet.
this 15 million?
I think that's an estimate of what, I think there's been some conversation with staff, and, so this is an estimate
Okay.
about what that cost would be, at least on preliminary discussions. It may be more.
So the projections that you have as far as payments, does that incorporate that 116 million?
The 160, yes. The 116 million that's the total amount that currently, right now, you're committed to.
Okay. So if you go back, I'll go to the next screen. Just so I'm perfectly transparent, things that my priorities in the downtown area. The Marion Street, I've been in several conversations with Hart and others. I think that we have a great opportunity to completely redefine a huge section of downtown with a linear park, with various types of amenities along that. And now that we can repurpose that street, which was a failed experiment for transit, it's not working, so we can figure out something else. I think that's an important goal to be looking at. And then, of course, I'm woefully I'm sure there must be some other money in here for historic streetcar, because expansion of the streetcar through downtown and into Tampa Heights is a really important element as well. Some of this other stuff is, I think we can talk about individually, but I think both of those are transformational projects that we need to pursue and look at that. Would it be beneficial both for mobility, being able to move north and south through the downtown in different corridors, both with biking, walking, scootering along Marion Street in a park-like setting, I think would be incredible. And having the streetcar extend through downtown, through Tampa Heights would be amazing. So this is two of the really good projects, this downtown CRA. We should well fund and make sure that that it happens.
Board Member Carlson.
Can you go back to the previous slide, please?
Sure.
Especially for the public watching, he said this, but the total amount for SPP, which is the Water Street project, was 100 million. That was passed 6-8 years ago before this council and before this mayor. Half of it was the city and half of it was the county. And so the difference between 50 million and 13 million has been paid out already. And it's reimbursement for amenities. And I'm told by the SPP people, if we pay $80 a foot for a sidewalk, they pay another $100 or something on top of that. So the reason why there are wide sidewalks there and nice sidewalks, this CRA is not paying for it, but they're adding on top of it. But still, the philosophy of the last administration was to subsidize in and around real estate development. We in the last 4 years have changed that, so it'll be up to this new council to decide what we're going to do going forward. But when you're looking at CRAs, they're meant to solve slum and blight, and there really objectively is no slum and blight in downtown. And if you look at the green line versus the red line, there's a huge amount of money. So we're going to the mayor's going to the public asking for an increase in taxes, which is going to be a huge burden to everyone. They may decide that it's worth the investment, but as they're looking at it, they want to make sure we're good stewards of all of our money. And so as we're looking at that big gap, that's a big gap that would prevent us from having to raise taxes in the future. Can you go to the next slide, please? And the affordable housing, as I understand it, talking to Ms. Travis, that was just arbitrarily set as a third of 2031, correct? Is that nobody had proposed that. In fact, this list, I don't remember ever seeing this list. Nobody is, I know what some of these projects are, but nobody from the CRA has ever talked to me about this. I had heard from the community about the Marion Street redevelopment project, which on the surface, what I hear about is I'm absolutely opposed to it. I think instead we should reopen it as a street. There's enough congestion in downtown. Franklin Street has not worked as a pedestrian mall. That's not going to work either. It's going to be a huge waste of money. We need to look at how do we get people in and out of downtown, especially as it's getting more dense. We've got so many residents. Next week we're going to get a briefing on how the area around the Emily Arena is changing because we can't just shut down all the streets anymore. If we have access to that street, you see people all the time trying to drive down it because it just makes sense to drive down it. Instead we should invest the money in Franklin Street. Maybe you got another 25 million there, but it hasn't worked so far. I like some of the other projects, but still, let me see. Here's the thing. I say this over and over again. The rest of the city that's not in a CRA is subsidizing the CRAs. So a lot of it is New Tampa, South Tampa. And people ask us all the time, why don't we have nice parks? Why don't we have nice sidewalk? Why don't we have any sidewalks? And when we buy a $4 million park in Channel District and we can't fix the benches and parks in the rest of the city, people complain and say, why aren't you being good stewards of the money? And I have to say, the CRA only allows us to do that. We've talked about this many times, but if we were able to move money out, we could use it in a different way. We could still use it on these projects if we want, but instead of being forced to use it in a geographic area, we could weigh the projects based on the entire city. And if we wanted to, we could take that just to clarify before Morris cuts me off, CRA cannot decide what to do with that money when it goes back to the general fund, but city council can, partnering with the mayor. And we could, at least for a short time, set it up as a housing budget. We could set up as a roads and complete streets or sidewalk budget. We could set it up as anything we want, as long as we can partner with the mayor and get the votes to do it. The question is, are these projects worth it? And here's the thing that I told Erica this morning. I have to sit with constituents all the time when their roads are like 80% falling apart and they say, why haven't you paved these roads? And so the question is, you look at this list and imagine you're standing in a road that's full of potholes and you're looking at that taxpayer and they ask you, what are you spending money on here that's better than fixing my road? Or talk to those 50,000 people that don't have homes and say, what are you spending money on that's better than helping me find a place to live? And even though I like a lot of these projects, I don't feel so strongly about them that it's more important that we have to ignore everything else. And if the rest of the city's subsidizing it, downtown and Channel District have been a huge success in that we've got lots of real estate development. And I'm pro downtown and I'm pro Channel District. But we have to be good stewards of the money, because even if this new tax passes in the future, we're going to have to pass more, because there's never going to be enough money to invest in the backlog where previous administrations spent almost no money repairing roads or infrastructure. So what I would suggest when we get down to the next item is, as you all look at this list, pick out what you think we should have. Let's say instead of 117 million, let's say we cap it at 150, or let's say we cap it at 200. Take your projects from here and stick them in the budget, and let's agree to it. But even if you take half of this, we have almost 200 million left over the next 10 years. That's not counting out to 2043. Who knows? That's probably another 500 million out there in the future. And think of what the city could do with that money if we're good stewards of it. It doesn't make sense anymore when the rest of the city is falling apart due to neglect and lack of budget. Why are we spending money on things that are nice to have in downtown?
Board Member Maniscalco.
So I have a question for Mr. Massey. We can't use CRA money to build a fire station, right?
No.
So we have here $136 million for affordable housing over a 10-year period. Could we, let's say, going back to what I mentioned earlier about Big Blue, let's say the police department relocates to another facility, as has been considered, but that building cannot be rehabbed. It's cost prohibitive. And let's say we demolish it. We keep the parking garage, but we demolish the building. Could we say, we're going to build a 20-story structure. 19 of those stories are going to be affordable housing. The bottom floor will be a fire station. the CRA pays for the affordable housing part in partnership with the city, since we already own the land. The general fund would pay for that fire station on the bottom floor. Is that, to circumvent you can't build a fire station, now that you're partnering with, the general fund is paying for the fire station on the first floor, and the CRA is paying for the housing upstairs. Would that work?
That's probably feasible. Just, I believe Mr. Stocco brought this up when I walked outside, but I think he brought up the police substation 3 headquarters. That was partially paid for with CRA dollars because there are CRA offices that were part of that. And so that was a combination deal that partly came out of the general fund and partly came out of the CRA fund. So we've done that before, so that would be a potential viable option, I think.
All right, very good. That answers my question. Thank you.
Board Member Vieira.
Thank you very much. Couple questions, if I may. I heard you talk about the STRAS funds, and you said something about negotiations. Did I mishear that?
No, it's just, it's a sign of the economy right now and inflation. Things are, for the agreements you've made, money's a little tight to come by, so there's some extensions.
Madam Chair.
They're looking at.
Excuse me, hold on. Can he, let him finish?
He's misrepresenting what was
But
discussed.
he can still.
I would ask Erica or Elise to get up and tell the truth, please.
Board Member
This is absurd.
Carlson, Mr. Burton, I would like to for him to finish what he was saying. And then if you want to redirect and say something, Administrator Drumgo, please do so.
All I'm saying is that the $25 million is locked in. We've been setting money aside, and all we have to do is wait for the STRAS and to meet its requirements of the contract.
The match. Okay, great. No, because my understanding was when we voted on that our commitment was locked in, and
Yes.
that's all I was inquiring on. That just got my curiosity going, so to speak, and
And
whatnot.
we budgeted for that, and it's budgeted this year also.
Great. And the projection you showed when you talked about the 15 million or so for Tampa Theater, or no, 14 million for Tampa Theater, I think it was $15 million for Museum of Art, 25 for STRAS. That's over 10 years. Commitments over the next 10 years, was it?
No, those are stretched between 4 and 5 years.
Okay, good, because I see 10 down there. Let me ask you something. I see with regards to some of the potential spending priorities, over on the next page, if I may. I've talked a lot about, and I'm actually going to make a motion on this because I could have sworn that I had coming back to us disability accessible parks for CRAs. Maybe I missed it on future agendas, but we do have Curtis Hickson Park here. It's used by a lot of folks. I don't believe, and maybe I'm wrong, that there's any, all abilities equipment there, major accommodations for kids who may have sensory challenges, physical challenges, et cetera, and I would like to see that for projects and programs. I brought that up when we talked about stress 2 years ago as something that I'd love to see in downtown. And so, again, as somebody, I don't remember who said it, I'm a little sick, so I'm slower than usual today. But I don't know how this list came about, but do we need a motion to add that on this list, or is that?
I would say that if you want things to happen in the downtown and other CRAs, the best first place to start is with the plan. Make it very clear in the plan. That gives the board, the attorney, and staff the ability to really work on things like that. Having parks that are dedicated completely for accessibility is a wonderful thing, and you're more than capable of having that done.
Attorney Massey.
2 things real quick. I believe you did make that motion. I think there was a response. I think there was CRA funds supposed to be set aside
Yes.
for that purpose in all the CRAs. So, so at least may be able to, Mr. Drumgo may be able to respond to that. This list is not an official list. It is just here's what we're thinking about kind of list, over a big project-wise over the next few years.
Excuse me, as the chair, I just want to say that Board Member Hurtek wants to speak, and then if there's anyone else, we'll go back and redirect to Board Member Carlson. He did ask Elise Drumgo to come up, so Board Member Hurtek, are you okay with that, because you were next? You want to go ahead on and speak?
Yeah, if I could get the slide before again.
And can I
So,
You want to go back to?
while I understand about wanting that we could have spent this money elsewhere, this is money that the CRA in the last 4 years has allocated. And I just want to know why this money, why do we do this? If we think it could be better spent elsewhere. Because, I mean, while I'm a lover of the arts, there's a lot of people who would say, I would rather have had paving for $25 million. I mean, right now, we don't have to approve the $15 million for the Tampa Museum of Art. We could take it and go to paving. But I don't believe that that's really what you want to happen. I think that there's value in all of these things. These things would simply not be funded if the downtown CRA didn't exist. We don't have the money. We just don't. I believe that there are still things that we can do in our downtown core that are valuable. Please go to the next slide. Land acquisition. I'm guessing that $54.5 million is close to what it would cost to buy the police station.
The police department, as it currently sits on the tax roll, is around 30 million
Okay. Then we have a little more money to play with.
as
So-
a public use.
Yes, yes. And so purchasing it for 30 million and being able to do,
What are you talking about, Big Blue?
yes,
Excuse me,
yes. So the reason we would buy Big Blue as the CRA, the CRA could buy it from the city, freeing up $30 million to build a new police station.
Okay. Is that a?
We would buy, no, I'm just saying, we would buy the land
Okay.
from this, we would buy the buildings from the city, give the city $30 million, build their police station. Then that affordable housing money is used to build affordable housing on that site. I understand, and I understand that Mr. Carlson doesn't like to move money like that, but I think it's a valuable way to go about it. And so I'm just saying, I see your vision and why you put the numbers where they are. And my only other random question that has nothing to do with any of this is Kylie Garden redevelopment. Do we own that parking garage or do we just own that garden above it?
We own one level of the parking garage immediately under, one level. We own one level, and this two-level parking garage, the bottom level is owned by the owner of, I'll say, the beer can building, the office tower.
That's wild. How do
And-
we split a parking garage?
And then the other level is owned by us, but leased to them under a long-term lease. And then the park is owned by the city in fee. And then that's the ownership structure. It took me about 30 days as a young lawyer to try, going through all the agreements to try to figure that
Well,
out.
you know what? I just want to say thank you for those 30 days because you were able to get a quicker answer now. So thank you. But so that $11 million, I mean, that parking structure needs to be completely redone. And I will just say, I read a study recently about the weight of new cars and how that's going to affect parking structure. So I am not at all in favor of saving any old parking structures. I believe they do need to be rebuilt because of the weight of what's coming.
Okay, well, this is getting really interesting. We've gone around, everyone has spoken except for myself and Board Member Miranda. Did you have anything that you wanted to say, Board Member Miranda?
The conversation
On this
is
topic?
very interesting because it's true that what the Councilor Massey said about the structure, I don't think I was here when that was done. I'm not sure, but I don't think I was. But there is something that's quirky because you own one floor, not the other one, and the other one you do. And it had a lot of flooding problems in the past. I remember that. I was here for that. So I don't know how that structure is. And when you look at television, anything that's of age and gets a lot of water and changes temperature, I don't care if it's made out of steel or whatever it is, it will rot and it will cause problems. When you're looking now at the infrastructure of America, it's in sad shape all over the United States. So I don't think those structures are gonna last a long time, but they have to be looked at by people that know what they're talking about. The engineers or whatever that we hire to do it. And I think it's time that they look at some of those things because we certainly don't want a catastrophe if we know about it.
Okay, So at this point, out of respect for Board Member Carlson, who wanted to interject a question, he asked for Deputy Administrator Drumgo to come up. I want to, before you speak, Drumgo, because I do realize that you sit on the board for the STRAS. Would this be a conflict of interest for you to have this conversation?
I do not believe so. I mean,
Okay.
I won't say anything too
Okay.
off the cuff.
So in the midst of what Mr. Burton was saying,
Sure.
the clarity for that for us and the public would be
Well, and
ideal at this point.
Yeah, so for the record, Elise Drumgo, Deputy Administrator for Development and Economic Opportunity. And I also sit on that board with Board Member Maniscalco. But yes, the STRAS will be back before you at some point in October with a project update. But the commitment that we have in place, it's a lock, and we're okay there. Okay, so I don't know what additional detail or questions need to be flushed out here, but now I think we're fine with that.
Okay, so we have Board Member Clendenin, then Carlson if he wants to come back and redirect Vieira, and then Maniscalco in my order of my teacher notes here.
So I just to make observation statements, and then I've got to bug out for just a few minutes because I have a meeting I have to go to, but I'll come right back. One, I think I don't want what Councilman Carlson said to get lost in all of this discussion, because he perfectly framed the dire situation we're in is trying to fund everything outside of the city that's not in a CRA. He was absolutely correct. When you see these examples, this is why the streets in South Tampa and portion, Sulphur Springs and New Tampa and all these areas that are not in CRAs, this is why they're in such bad shape, because we've got all this money in these CRAs that right now we can't spend anywhere else besides the CRAs unless we do some creative, maybe kind of weird, I don't even know how legally we could do some of those things. I think staff is going to come back to us to try to figure out what we can, if there is any legal mechanism to get money out of these CRAs to be able to accomplish some of these goals. But when they created the CRAs, these CRAs have become incredibly successful, probably more successful than anybody envisioned them to ever be at the time that they were done. So a victim of their own success. But this is where we're at right now. So if we can sunset them, or if we can peel them back, whatever the legal possibilities are, that's great. If we can't, though, we need to do the best things we can possibly do. Now, I will say that I'm actually shocked by Councilman Carlson saying he wanted to basically build another north-south expressway through downtown Tampa for the Marion Street redevelopment of building roads there, because in the urban core, I'm so much more about moving people and not vehicles. I really want to be able to, we need to turn into that type of a city where we can create mobility that is not dependent upon private vehicles flying through the city to get from point A to point B. So, building these mobility programs through streetcar expansion, rapid buses, bike, walk, scooter, whatever, water taxis, whatever we come up with to move people around our urban core, I think is the way we go. So when we look at something like that Marion Street redevelopment, I hope to see that. I agree Franklin Street was another one of these failed, best intentions, obviously a failed concept. One day we're going to have to visit that. But you look at the list of priorities of what you would see downtown. Yeah, it'd be nice to be able to accomplish almost everything on this list, but what is the biggest amount of gain that we could do in a small amount of time with the money and the availability that we have? I think we look towards mobility programs and transportation programs. I think that's the answer. That should be our priorities, and that's what we should look at moving forward.
Board Member Carlson.
Thank you. Just a scheduling thing. I have to be on a call from 3:30 to 3:45, so I'm going to step out just before that, and we'll come back. If you all want to, it doesn't seem to me like we're ready to vote on number 7 today, so I could make a motion to move it to next month. But just a few comments. He stepped out, but I'm talking about Marion Street versus Franklin Street. I'm in favor, ideally, of pedestrian malls, but the center of gravity is not in that direction. And if there was a development along that corridor that would lend itself to creating activity on the street, that might make sense. There's already not activity on Franklin Street enough. And maybe we're going to run the streetcar down there, I don't know. But if we want to invest something to figure out if we can activate Franklin Street again, I would be okay with that. But to create another pedestrian mall that's going to be empty and fail, I don't think we should do that. And we've tried with festival marketplace and things like the one in Harbor Island and the one in Channel District, and these things fail. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna spend $100 million and get people to invest, and then nobody's gonna walk on it. Right now, we're trying to do that in Ybor. And again, if we had this money outside of downtown, we could spend it in a place where it actually could be activated. There's a lot of activation that's gonna go on in Ybor soon. To the art, could you go back one slide? I'll take blame for at least the Straz Center and Tampa Theater. What happened is that 3 or 4 years ago, I wanted to make a motion to put a cap on downtown and Channel District. And I took the Channel District one to a vote, and it failed. I failed to get the votes to put a cap on it. I had on the agenda to put the downtown one cap on, and I felt like I didn't have the votes, so I took it off the agenda. So to be fair to anybody who was here, it never came up to a vote, but I didn't think I had the votes or I would have done it. Seeing that there was no support to put a cap on it, then I pushed to invest in things that would help the whole city, not just part of the city. If we're doing sidewalks in downtown, South Tampa needs sidewalks, New Tampa needs sidewalks, East Tampa, West Tampa still needs sidewalks, Ybor needs sidewalks. So what are the things that could benefit us? And Tampa Theater, Performing Arts Center are used by everybody throughout the city, and they're seen as jewels. The last administration defunded them, attacked them, it hurt their ability to raise money. Straz Center was looking to raise $100 million for their expansion. It's a city-owned property, and they were looking to put in $100 million, but they shelved that project during COVID, and they were not going to reactivate it. When we came back to us, and several of us talked to them, I think, what we did is we proposed putting in 25% of a $100 million investment. So they're gonna invest 75 more million, and probably more after that, in our building, and we're only putting in 25 million. So we're getting a pretty good return on it, but we know from real economic development that organizations like Straz Center, Tampa Theater, other arts organizations are deeply connected to our ability to attract and maintain tech companies in our area. Tampa Theater, there was no opposition to that. It is a jewel of our community. Again, the last administration had viciously attacked them, and this money will enable them to completely restore the museum. If I had a preference, going back 3 years ago, I would have rather moved the money out. I absolutely think it should have been spent on roads in other parts of the city and affordable housing and other things. But since I didn't think we had the votes to do it, we did this. So now we're at a point where there are things that we could spend money on, but if we have to compare that to explaining to constituents why we're not fixing their roads, which is a basic thing, I think it's difficult. To the point where I interrupted a few minutes ago, the Straz Center has raised, they have kept their commitments, they have raised, and I'm not on the board, I'm not in any way involved with them, I've never been on the board. They have raised their matching money. What's happening is then the supply chain issues going on worldwide and the cost of things, I think they're gonna come back to us and ask for a small, minor alteration in the schedule. They've done everything else to keep their commitment. So what I did not want anybody to have is the impression that somehow they have not kept their promises, because they have. The police building, when we were sold the idea of Hannah Avenue originally, it was $108 million, and then the city was gonna sell the police building, and they estimated 22 million, 24 million, something like that, and then they were gonna sell that building on Spruce Street, and that would be like another 30 million or so. I don't remember the exact numbers, but together that was gonna add up to about $40–50 million, which would offset the 108 million. And then when they came back to us to approve it the final time, and originally it was 2 buildings, when they came back, they said they were gonna delay selling the police station and delay selling the other one. But I wanna point out to everybody, that was justification for Hannah Avenue. Had they not talked about selling the police building and the Spruce building to make up for it, I never would have supported it in the beginning. I believe that we should put facilities downtown, but that's a really important piece of property that could be developed by the private sector. We could ask them to put affordable housing, or we could subsidize them to put affordable housing. We could ask them to make it a town center, whatever we want, but it's a really important place. We know from our internal assessments of the building that its lifespan is near finished. So I would just go back to that. There are opportunities in downtown, but I would ask everyone to please go back to the next list. As you look at this next list, think about, what do you think is an absolute must? Like Likes Park, we have to put the benches back in Likes Park. That's a must. That's not 1.7 million. But there are things that you all may want. But come back, if I could, maybe I'll move item number 7 to next month. But think about which ones, and this is, as Morris said, this is not our list. This is the first time I've ever seen this list. Nobody's even talked to me about these projects. So you may have, this is not a prioritization that we put in. So if you have ideas of projects that you want in downtown, come back and let's get a ballpark. So instead of 117 million cap, what if we put 200 million or cap or 150 million cap? But if there's anything extra above that to do, we have to justify it by telling residents that we're not fixing their road because we're paying for these things. And that's where I have a concern. If we can prevent tax increases in the future by moving money or moving money into things that we need. A group asked me the other day, why don't we have a CRA in Sulphur Springs? And I've explained here, CRAs are about subsidizing high-end housing. They're not about really helping communities. The money comes in from, we get Water Street, and then we use the money to subsidize the next development. But I said, I asked the people, how many of you think that the 25 million generated by Channel District and downtown is best spent in downtown versus Sulphur Springs? And everybody agreed that it should be spent in Sulphur Springs. So if you all want to take $300 million and put in a fund for Sulphur Springs or whatever, I'm fine. I just don't feel comfortable paying for things that are nice to have rather than things that we really need.
Board Member Vieira.
Thank you very much. And if I go on questions that I was asking before, I wasn't done with my remarks. So that's, if I go back in time, it's because I wasn't done with my remarks.
No, that's fine, and I appreciate that.
It's funny with the Straz question, as a civil litigator, I've 20 years, what is that? Don't ask a question you don't know the answer to. You know what I'm saying, which is kind of funny. But going back to the disability parks, again, I would like that added to this list. A couple of months ago, we did have a presentation by Parks and Recreation in CRA for things that can be done with a plan that was made. I could have sworn that I had that coming back because I usually have things come back. Because if you don't have things come back, then they get away from you, right? So I will motion to have that come back next month, in fact, and see what yes, sir, go ahead.
Second.
Thanks.
Okay.
And my apologies for wanting to speak to it. We actually, you all as a board, you approved that plan. You already approved the parks plan for accessibility and inclusive play equipment throughout all CRAs. And so if you recall, we brought forth that list to you. We presented that with the cost, approximately $3.2 million across all CRAs. And we showed you the condensed timeline that the city would reach in order to integrate all of those elements. So you've already approved that, and we've already started working with parks on that.
Yeah.
So when you say bring it back, I guess I need to understand, because there's actually a timeline relative to each park, and we laid it out on an annual basis when those improvements would take place. So just want to gather and understand.
And I really, really appreciate that. And when I say bring it back, I don't mean for any further action, just to see how it's going. So I'll do it more than a month out, heck, I'll do it 6 months out. I don't care, just so that it stays in our view. So I'll do that at the end. But what you've just said is stellar and spectacular, and warrants and prevents the thing next month. So there you go. And yes, sir.
Yeah, just to add to Mr. Domgo's point, this list, while it's a great list, it's not inclusive of every single thing that you all have funded. For instance, Tampa Union Station is not is on this list. There's over $2 million funded.
Good point.
$1 million to the Jackson House. That's not on the list. So there are things that are not on this list that you all have already budgeted and approved.
I get it. And Attorney Massey, your points are very well taken. These are the 10 suggestions, not the 10 commandments, and they're subject to liberal amendments, so very well said. When it comes to the capping of the downtown CRA, it's funny because my recollection always was, and maybe I'm wrong here, I always voted against for Channelside because there's some unintended consequences that could come from that. But for the downtown CRA, I always voted to cap it because my understanding was the consequences of doing that would be very, very limited. I recall that passed 4-3, if I recall. I could be wrong, who knows? But again, I've always been supportive of that, because again, like folks have said, you take a look at this list, it's almost like we're looking at, hey, listen, we got this money, we got to spend it on these projects. And it just, again, I support a downtown CRA. I always have. I come from a district where there are no CRAs. In certain areas, especially New Tampa, have some heartburn over this, and I always go, listen, it's important to develop downtown. It's important to have a residential, growing, vibrant downtown that we give some special scrutiny and attention to, et cetera. But there also is some common sense, and I think that capping it and continuing to look at it and acting upon it if it makes sense would make sense and whatnot. With regards to the STRAS, I don't recall, again, I'm a little bit sick and slower than usual, whatever. In terms of going back on our word, to the extent that, contractual obligations have been made, et cetera, again, my vote was what it was. I stand by it 110%. I always thought that we could use that money on things like the streetcar, on things like affordable housing, on things like disability parks, like I said, but our body's word is paramount, and people are relying upon that. They're meeting their obligations. So just for the record, as the one dissenting vote on that CRA, I'm not talking about going back on our word, and I wouldn't support that, because character of a body is very, very important. And it's not in dispute that they do amazing work. So again, I think that I wouldn't want to go back on our word or anything of that nature, just for the record. Thank you very much.
Okay, so Board Member Maniscalco, then Board Member Hurtak, and then hopefully me.
So, some interesting things were brought up. The CRA money can only be spent within the boundaries or for the downtown CRA within those boundaries. But there's ways to get around that, and Councilwoman Hurtak brought up a great point. I think that, and I'll make this into a motion, that the CRA explore buying the TPD building from the city of Tampa. If you said $30 million, that would go to the general fund that could be used for a new police station. I've talked to some people in not the administration, but on the other side, about where and what possibilities there are for TPD. We would then, as a CRA, own that. We buy that parcel. We already have the land belongs to the city, and then we have money there to create or build that affordable housing. Whether we keep that parking garage, I know they're expensive, or we tear it down and build a new structure. Because showing the numbers here over the 10-year period, $136 million for affordable housing. Spruce Street was mentioned, not in a CRA. And if it was mentioned that the city would sell that property, to offset costs for hand or whatever, I think the city, and this is a discussion for city council, the city should keep that property. I don't know how it's zoned or how we have to change it and use it for multifamily and have housing there and keep it within the city's control. Within that neighborhood, it's a neighborhood, and residential would work there. That's another thing. So first, let me make the motion that I'd like CRA staff to come back October 5th to explore the possibility of the CRA buying from the city of Tampa the Tampa Police Department building.
Okay. Well, yes,
She did.
she did. Yeah, see, y'all second stuff in advance, and it gets confusing up here.
Yeah, no, she did.
She did, thank you. Okay, so we have this motion on the floor by Board Member Maniscalco, second by Board Member Hurtak. Discussion? Yes. October 5th.
I see, I'm sorry, October 12th. I'm sorry.
Okay, so
Right here.
she's, okay, 12.
As a staff report.
As a staff report, not a CRA report?
Well, it's staff report under the CRA meeting.
Okay, I thought CRA was on.
No, it says staff reports on the agenda.
Yeah, right, I meant October 5th is,
Well, it's CRA.
okay. I'm sorry, October 5th is my birthday, that's why I'm just like, what's that? Okay, so there's now discussion on this motion, yes.
No, I appreciate the creative thinking by everybody, but my understanding was this was going to be sold to the private sector, and my preference is that's a very valuable piece of property. We already had a couple subsidized properties around here. We need to, we're raising taxes because we need, or the mayor's proposing raising taxes because we need money to be able to fix roads and things. We're better off getting the private sector. The private sector will pay, and we can use that money to buy a new police station. Thank you.
Okay, Board Member Vieira?
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, just wanted to salute the quick thinking on the dais. I think Councilwoman Hurtak talked about it, and Councilman, obviously, Maniscalco making the motion for this. If this can work, that would be great. And, you know, my view is that for our public safety improvements that we need, let's get them however we can. If it's through a reasonable millage increase, let's do it. If it's through this, whatever it may be. So I just wanted to salute y'all for that. That's wonderful. So I'm glad to support this. Thank you.
Okay, more discussion before the vote? Board Member Hurtak, Board Member Maniscalco.
I would then, listening to Board Member Carlson, make a friendly amendment to say, let's explore that, but also see what amount of money we could get, maybe from the private sector. Your thoughts on what the best way to go about that might be, or no?
But that really, you're getting into more of a city council, city
Oh,
administration
okay,
issue.
okay.
And
Then
also, I
fine,
just want to
we
make
can-
it clear that under our charter, the negotiation of that sort of thing is really done on that side of the house, so.
Okay, okay. So then, yes, then, never mind.
Okay, Board Member Maniscalco.
You know, my point is I want to make sure that, I want us to maintain control of that property because land in downtown is sparse. Either it's a surface parking lot or it's another development. And this is in the core. I know it's a very valuable piece, but it's our valuable piece and I want to maintain that. But also, and this will be a city council issue, once we get this report back on the 12th, I'm going to bring up on the 19th, depending on what the report says, I'll bring up on the 19th of the city council meeting, how we can then utilize that bottom floor, was mentioned by Councilmember Miranda in the discussion we had earlier, to create a new fire station downtown. Again, we control the property, and I think it kills multiple birds with one stone. We're building the housing in the downtown core, but we're also accommodating the requests and the needs in the public safety sector of another fire station. Because thinking about what was proposed in, you know, more ALS units and everything, where do we put those? You know, we have a growing downtown population, a growing density, and we need space. So I think this would, if all the chips fall into place, I think this would work because we have, you know, we're stuck with how we can spend the money downtown, and I think this allows us to circumvent the rules while, you know, using it for a good public purpose. So my motion was made about October 12th, and then I'll you know, we'll wait till then and take it further.
Any further discussion? We can go for the vote. There is a motion on the floor by Board Member Maniscalco, second by Board Member Hurtak. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
With Carlson voting no
Okay.
and Clendenin being absent at vote.
Okay, so we're gonna pick back up on Maniscalco spoke. Now it's Board Member Hurtak's turn to speak.
Okay, thank you. I, you know, thinking again, when it comes to Marion Street redevelopment, I'm honestly curious what it would look like if we really have to have a street, if we're really looking at streetcar expansion. We already have that space. Why not look at expanding the streetcar to Marion Street? So I'm gonna request that that come forward. I will put it at October 12th, but if it takes longer,
You may want to do this as city council. This is, you're really getting into,
no, this is the CRA money.
well, it's,
But that's what I'm saying. If the CRA
well,
can,
this is just, go ahead.
So, if I may, and I know that it may feel like this looks a little bit different from when I presented it during the retreat, but this is virtually the same list of items that I presented during the retreat. And at that time, I shared with you all that these items these came forward from your CAC. And so when we're talking about programmatically looking at projections or projects, you know, while there are no commitments, these are things that the CAC have recommended that we continue to go forward with. And so with that, with the Marion Street redevelopment, there's actually money in the budget for this fiscal year in order to explore exactly what you're talking about, like how we better repurpose or utilize that space. So I just want to say that the funding is there for it, but again, it's a matter of whether or not the board would like to move forward with, you know, seeing that plan or that study, and then ultimately what you do on the redevelopment side.
Okay, well, I just would like to make sure that, that a streetcar extension be considered for that corridor. It seems like it would be less dramatic than any other place.
Understood.
Yeah. Okay, oh, good, it's my turn. I'm so glad you're still standing up there, Mr. Burton. You heard a lot of stuff up here, and you know, we only have you for a short period of time. So if there's anything, I like hearing, even though we make our comments and say what we need to say, rebuttal from staff is important to me. I don't think you should just receive it just because we're up here saying it. There's a lot of things said. If there's anything that you want to clarify or comment on regarding this discussion of your presentation, this is the opportunity to do that, and then I'll move forward with what I want to say.
Other than the list that we have is exactly what Elise says it is. It's been derived from the community through us. We've talked about it at great length. Marion Street, we put money aside this year for you to look at that. If you wanted to, it's up to you to decide. The only thing that I'll add is that you know, it's all based on the plan, and you are currently in planning with your CAC and a consultant, and that plan will be coming forward to you in the near future. So all I can say is, if it's not in the plan, you can't do it. Make sure it's in the plan, so the attorney there will be a much happier attorney, not have to say no so much. And make sure you get what you want in your plan. And then, and by the way, there are statutory remedies for if you want to take money from the CRA at the end of the year that hasn't been spent. It's already in the statute. It doesn't have to be in the plan. He knows all about that, and he can guide you on that. So, thank you.
Because you know, I mean, since I'm new here, I really want to see Central Park on this plan in some kind of way. It's its own CRA, so so that wouldn't matter then. That's okay, then I'll leave that point alone. The other part that I wanted to talk, just briefly, there was so much said up here earlier, but I'm glad that Board Member Carlson, although he's not sitting here right now, mentioned how he got to the point where he recommended that the Stras get $25 million, because I didn't understand that for a long time, and you know, it's voted upon, like Board Member Vieira said, you know, we can't go back on our word. It's a vote and it passed. But everyone does not benefit from our wonderful assets in this city. I must say that. I know that for a fact because I wrote a grant to take 175 students to the Stras Theater myself, and it was an amazing experience for them. I still have the card that they wrote me. But because that was the first time that they've ever gone there. They do not come from families that could provide them with a $200 ticket to see something, you know, at the Stras. So every citizen in Tampa does not benefit from that. Even when I went for the first time, I believe it probably was a sacrifice. Nevertheless, it is an asset, and it's important that, you know, we take care of those things, but not at the expense of some of our greatest needs, and that is housing. But also, there was this comment made about how the previous administration viciously took away from the arts. I don't necessarily like the terminology of how we reference our past administrations. I wish Board Member Carlson was here so he could hear that. So, but viciously, you know, I don't, you know, like when we pick up on terms like that, because just because someone said it doesn't mean that it's true. And I'm trying to move our council and board away from having conversations about, you know, previous administrations, good or bad, unless it's a historical reference that makes a difference in making a decision. Other than that, I think I'll just leave it at that.
May I make a motion
Do we
to
have?
continue item 7 to next month?
Yes, I will accept that motion, of course, to continue item number 7. Is there a second on that motion? We have a motion from Board Member Maniscalco, second by Board Member Miranda. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Deputy Administrator Drumgrove.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, you know, I just wanted to tie a couple of things together. I know that you've had a lot of discussion, but for the rest of the board as well, you know, your Director Moody just went through your objectives and where the organization is headed as a whole. And so, you know, I would be remiss if I didn't say to you all that, you know, your downtown is a key part of that, and the objectives that you all set forth. You know, there will be opportunities to pick up new projects. When you talk about a redevelopment plan update, when you talk about all the things that that could potentially happen with our economy in the coming years, there is some uncertainty, and I think that our office market has outperformed peer cities. There's a real chance at some point that, you know, your CRA may be a key vehicle to either preserve or to rescue some of these buildings downtown should they become more vacant. So, you know, I just want to, you know, just put that out there to say that you all are charting a new path and a new direction, and you will certainly need to fund some of those initiatives as you consider for next month what you decide to do here with your downtown CRA TIF.
Do we have item number 8 still?
Okay. Board Member Hurtak.
Thank you. I just want to quickly respond to what Mr. Drumgo said. I just want to say thank you for bringing that point up, because it's something, because we are in our economic situation right now in the city of Tampa, we are incredibly blessed. And I really appreciate you bringing the point that we may not always be this blessed. And that, in fact, I do believe, I just read in the Business Journal that in the next 6 months or so, we're gonna find out whether those office leases are being extended or not. So we may have issues before us before we know it. So I think maybe with this conversation, maybe a year-to-year consideration of what we can do with extra money in the downtown CRA. Thank you, though, Mr. Drumgo, for bringing that to our attention, keeping that on our radar.
Okay, thank you. Item number 8, Director Moody.
Great. I had one point of clarification on continuing item 7. Would you like to discuss the same presentation, or would you like any additional information?
The same presentation,
Just more time.
Original guy is not here, so I would just keep it, you know, keep this, nothing additional.
Okay, great. Yeah, we could just continue the discussion. Great. Item 8 is regarding, we pulled the budgets for the city and CRA service agreement for the last 4 years and included any budget amendments that were included over the last 4 years.
Yeah,
We already received and
Yeah,
filed that?
received and
Okay,
filed,
yep,
yes.
all the information is there
Yes, my
and accessible
apologies.
to
Now
the
we're
public.
at
No problem.
consent agenda items.
Yes.
So do you have any closing remarks for any of those staff reports, anything?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So now we're gonna go on to our consent items, 9 and 10. Can I have a motion?
Move to approve 9 and 10?
No, me.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll second, or he's second, but I want to say.
Okay, so we have a motion by Board Member Maniscalco, second by Board Member Hurtak. Discussion?
I just want to say that $233,000, how much acreage is this?
It's about 4 acres total.
Yeah.
4 acres for
Yeah.
$233,000,
Yeah.
because there's no utilities.
But you think it's 2010, the price is.
You would, but we're just really lucky because I forget who's selling it, redevelopment agency, or
The housing and.
It's actually, the city is selling it to the CRA, it's from ACD,
Yeah.
it's to deal with some CDBGs.
But either way, I just want to I'm so happy that staff has our feelers out everywhere, and so that when this opportunity came up, they came to us. And I just wanted to say thank you for that. This is magical property.
Yes, it is. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead on and approve our consent agenda items. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Consent agenda carries. Okay, so now we're on to new business. Councilmember Hurtak.
Yes. The Habitat for Humanity, Hillsborough County, has recognized East Tampa CRA with a Community Partnership Award, and I would like to invite them to the September 17th CRA Board meeting to present on the Impact Award and the successful partnership.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Board Member Clendenin.
I'd like the motion to ask the staff to present a report to Tampa City Council, I'll come up with a date in a second, on the previous, and I know you're very familiar with this, what was formerly known as the Mayor's Challenge Fund, to find out lessons learned and how we could possibly breathe life into that.
If you could make that motion tonight when you're sitting as city council, because this really should be coming to you as city council, not as
CRA
the CRA.
Well, see, I was thinking because of the money of the CRA, to be able to use it.
It's okay.
Yeah,
It's okay.
okay, I'll do it at city council tonight.
Correction on the day.
Preview of things to come.
Oh, apologies, I will change, yeah, okay, you stuck the.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Amended changes opposed? Of course, none. Motion carries. Okay,
No, ma'am.
Isn't it nighttime already?
Board Member Vieira?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, and good meeting, by the way. Long, and you ran it, so well done, if I may say so.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I had motion in City Council for staff to meet with the Hive, HIVE, for potential projects on disability-related housing, and I said I was going to do the same thing for CRA staff. And I'd asked them to come back with that. I'll have it, I don't remember when I had it coming back in City Council, but I'll do it in December. And again, if y'all need more time, please, we can do January, February, it's all good. So just let me know, and all that. Then next, if I may, I had indicated regarding the CRA improvements to parks and CRAs for disabilities. I'd just like a report on that in April of 2024, which is about 6 months from now. Again, if more time's needed, it's all good. Oh, and you know what? I'm sorry. Again, I'm.
Yeah, it's okay.
Go ahead, my bad.
Are those motions?
Yes, so let's do one at a time. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
I second the first.
Okay, so, no, let's put it in a sentence, the first one for me, please.
Yes, ma'am.
For the community who's watching as well, so no one will be confused.
So the first one, and again, I apologize, I'm
okay.
a little under the weather, for CRA staff to meet with the Hive for grant funding for disability-related housing, for them to come back with a report in December.
Second. Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. There's a motion by Board Member Vieira, second by Board Member Maniscalco. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Your second motion.
Yes, ma'am. For CRA staff to report on the status of the disability park improvements, April 2024.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Board Member Vieira, second by Board Member Maniscalco. All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Miranda, do
And
you have any new?
If
Oh,
I
you
may,
have
just
another
one
one.
more.
Okay,
I know,
let's go.
right?
Board Member
Motion
Vieira,
for
sure.
staff to report on a grant funded by the CRA with a match to support equipment, including special needs equipment for kids. King's Kids Learning on 34th Street, one of East Tampa's finest daycare facilities. I know many of us are taking tours of there. And just on the feasibility of that, again, to come back in December of 2023, more time is needed. Again, it's all good.
Okay. King's Kid motion on the floor by Councilman Vieira, second by Board Member Maniscalco. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Board Member Miranda, anything?
I'd like to
Okay.
make a point of order.
You would like a point of order?
I would. And I think part of our distraction is because Charlie Miranda no longer is wearing a tie. And I think there's been a break in the continuum. I think we should move to censure that Councilman Miranda, the failure to wear a tie this afternoon.
Madam Chair, before you adjourn the meeting, real quickly, as part of updating the CAC
Yes.
policy, I was asked to look at our bylaws, and our bylaws have not been updated since 2008, and there've been some serious changes in the CRA law since then. So our bylaws don't really read exactly the way they probably should. So I have a red line version of the changes I'm proposing that I'd hand out, and we could vote on it perhaps, or at the next CRA board meetings, but just.
Absolutely. I was gonna do it. I remembered. Okay, I've handed the Mike gavel to the co-chair. So while he's doing that, I will make a motion. No problem. Can you recognize me, please?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you. I want to move that all youth programs funded by the CRA and managed by the CRA staff be transitioned to the Neighborhood and Community Affairs under Director Osea Nguyen for management and funding. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Miranda. Is there any discussion? Because I want to give some context to it as well. Okay.
Yeah, give some
Thank
context.
you. We had a really great program, the East Tampa program, summer program that was led this summer, and it's fine the way that it is. But we have an opportunity with all of our youth employment programs to bring them under one umbrella, so our CRA can actually do their CRA job. And then we have this funding housed under the umbrella of all of our summer youth employment programs for a couple of reasons. Now that we have workforce as a requirement for graduation, there's an opportunity for students working to earn a credit for employment. If it is funded in a way where it's isolated to one organization or one entity within the city handling it, it provides us with an opportunity to develop some of the positions, to give them even more opportunities to learn about the city, to have them create capstone projects and things of that nature. And we are going to work on that over the next 6 months, coming months, so that it can be organized. I'm not saying that we're going to take away the East Tampa Summer Youth Program, but to house them together under one umbrella of how they apply and how we develop summer youth employment programs so that we can share it with the entire city is what I'm trying to do. So that's the reason behind it. I remember when it was presented by our CRA manager, Cedric McCray, he indicated during the presentation that, you know, he had not had time to spend as much time with them that he would like because he has other responsibilities. So I want to take the onus off of that and to streamline this process where we can determine if we need to hire temporary staff, summer staff, like teachers who are over OJT programs, so that we can better manage that and let CRA do the job that they are, you know, assigned to do. That's my point behind it. Yes. More discussion.
Yes, if you don't mind, I would love to have them come back next month and explain it more first. Just because, you know, having spent so much time putting this program together last year, I really want to make sure that the vision that I had for it is realized as well. So could we actually would you mind having someone come and talk to us about it and then vote on it next month? I mean, I think it's a great idea in principle. I would just like to know more about it to make sure that what I put in motion, I mean, I would love to see, so.
That is not lost on me. You know what, that is a really good idea because it does take some more coordination with the HR department as well as talking to even the Neighborhood and Community Affairs Division. But the goal is to let's make CRA. You know, let them do their jobs because as you can see, they have a lot to do. And so taking the youth employment program and allowing all of our staff to support youth programs in a way that is outlined where they understand it so that they can have meaningful time to spend with kids for a particular reason, but just develop our summer youth program so that it can benefit not just East Tampa, but even our students all over, you know, Tampa proper. But yeah, so what I'll do is I will amend the motion for it to be a staff report that we bring back in, let's say, really December. We need a little bit more time. It doesn't have to be October. We can say December's meeting, which is December 14th. So who seconded for me?
Miranda.
Okay, well, you're running this motion.
So is that second amendment, or strike that, is the amendment to the motion?
Yes.
Okayed by you, Councilman Miranda? Okay, we have any other discussion? Yes, sir, go ahead.
So I think in principle, I think this absolutely makes sense. I mean, and if I was thinking of it as a vacuum and administratively, I keep this heavy burden of the general fund budget versus CRA money. We're trying desperately to figure out how to get money out of the CRAs for, you know, and are we shifting?
Well, you know, I'm glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that because I don't have all my notes in front of me. But I said it previously in a comment before about the the onus of us as the city, we can't do everything, and public-private partnerships is a very important part of this. There are organizations, just based on who I've met with, who are willing to help fund our employment program. That's part of it, not just coming from the general fund. The mayor already has funds set aside for summer employment programs, and sometimes we don't even fill all those jobs.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm all about internships, and I think that the
Yes.
city, there's all kinds of opportunities we have in the city to help the youth.
Just, if I can interrupt, one of the challenges we have as a CRA funding these types of programs
Yes.
is that we have to tie it to our plan
Right.
and
Right.
physical improvements. And so that's one of the problems and one of the complaints of, for instance, the East Tampa summer program is that they're picking up trash in East Tampa. Well,
Right,
that's
exactly.
part of the reason why they're doing that is they
Yes.
have to further something in our plan, which is,
Okay.
so that's
Okay,
one challenge.
I just feel, needed to kind of hash that
So-
out, because I think it perfectly, it makes absolute sense.
Yeah,
I mean,
because
this is-
remember, there is a community member from East Tampa that came up quite a bit talking about that. She even referenced the students is slaves at one point. And so just to even get away from that, there's a lot of value in all of our programs. I want to go on the record and say that I was a custodian, my first job with the city, and so was my legislative aide, Darlene Johnson. We both were custodians, and look where we are now. So that is not the point, but I
was a
just.
janitor,
Yeah,
too.
exactly. So anyway, we can go ahead on and vote on it, and I will definitely we can do the work, working with everyone and bringing back a report in December, because we do want to get ready for our summer 24 programs.
Yes, ma'am. And do you mind quickly summarizing it for Councilman Carlson, who just walked in, who's going to have to vote on this?
Sure, sure. I move that all youth programs funded by CRA be looked at through a staff report for us to determine the best way to go about putting them under our neighborhood and community affairs program for management and public-private partnership funding.
And to come back.
Coming back December 14, 2023.
Great. We have a motion by Chairwoman Henderson, a second by Councilman or Board Member Miranda. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay.
Anything else, Madam?
No, that's it.
And may I
Board Member
say?
Carlson. Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Okay, well, I thought we were gonna end with just,
Yeah.
I especially just wanted to salute all of our staff, including
Yes.
obviously Mr. Burton. God bless you for all your work and
Yes,
everybody.
thank you.
But everybody, I mean, all of y'all work really, really hard, and today was a really long meeting that I'm making longer by talking, but I just really appreciate y'all. So thank you
It's
very much.
not gonna be like this in Manatee County. We need a water taxi going to
Hey,
the
can I
city
have
of
a-
Anna Maria, I'm just
Can a
saying.
motion to receive and file by, I have a motion to receive and file by Board Member Maniscalco. Can I have a second? Second by Board Member Clendenin. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries, and meeting adjourned.